Another rant video cooked up fresh for ya, and today's video we're going to be talking about the other specific type of towers that a lot of people are not even using anymore nowadays, and those are the melee towers. As you know, there are a certain amount of melee towers where, unlike range towers, pretty much like, for an example, the cowboy, who have a pretty long range-ish weapon to where they can take down any enemies in their detection range, and you can upgrade their weapon to make them stronger and have a bigger range. The melee towers are a little bit more different, because these guys, instead of having a long-range weapon, or like at all a firearm, they instead have a, well, melee weapon, and with these low, I guess, range-ish weapons, they also have a low range of, well, attack range as well. For the sacrifice of their, I guess, detection range, they have an increase of DPS or some other way in order to actually redeem themselves for having a smaller detection range. As an example, the most infamous one out of all of them is the Gladiator. The Gladiator does very low damage, however, can attack multiple enemies at the same time. However, since he doesn't do that much damage, he doesn't really do that much during the mid game, and then eventually the late game, aka more than like wave, I don't know, 20 to 30-ish, he doesn't really do anything, and that's just when his existence is just completely forgotten about. Then you have the Warden, who is kind of the same, to where he does have a small attack range, however he does a lot more damage to single units. However, he is a lot more expensive to place down, so that is kind of the downsides of the Warden. And then you got the Slasher, who's a little bit more expensive than the Warden at around 1250, who just does a little bit more damage, and I mean, he's not bad, but I mean, he's not that great, so like, he's meh-ish, I guess. And then you have the alpha male, and that is the Brawler, because of just how much damage he does per punch attack. But not only the punches, but he also has around, I believe, 2 abilities. The passive ability just pretty much allows him to push back any enemy attackers that he's attacking, but also temporarily stun them, and the ability is able to just jump around the map, dealing any splash damage to basically move around the map. Quite nice. So what does this video have to do with, well, melee towers? And let's just go ahead and just give you the cold water, I guess. And that is the fact that melee towers nowadays don't really have too much of a reliability against, well, the enemies and current dynamic of the gameplay. As an example, we have many reworked game modes. There were enemies that were just blatantly easy to deal with, like as an example, Old Molten. You've got enemies that basically had no HP, and that's when the Gladiator was actually very good, the Warden was very good. Enemies were just downright easier to deal with. However, with game modes like Intermediate Mode, Reworked Fallen, and other reworked game modes like Molten itself, these enemies have become a lot more beefier and a lot more spammier to deal with, to which melee enemies with not already that much damage dealing and also the less detection range kind of have basically been nerfed in a way if you think about it. Now, the 2 melee towers you can basically give a pass to is number 1, the obvious one, the Brawler, and then the second one, I guess you can say, is the Sledger, since in my eyes he's still a pretty good melee tower. I haven't used him in a while, but I mean, here he is on paper or in the footage, and quite honestly, he's pretty solid. But still, with enemies being super beefy and you needing a lot of range to take down these beefy enemies who can stun your towers and can go on for quite a long time on the path, melee towers aren't necessarily the best option. But since these close quarter towers don't really do that much damage against beefed up enemies, they cannot really do much at all. Now, quite honestly, to fix this, I don't really know what they could do to really buff melee towers. Now, obviously, you could just give, melee towers some little bit extra buffs, like for an example, cheaper cost, aka to place down. For some reason, the Brawler's 1,000 now, and also the Slasher 1,200, which is absurd, which pretty much makes every single person looking at the loadout being like, alright, I need an early tower for the early waves, and also somewhat for the mid waves. Then you see the Slasher with 1250, and you're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I'm definitely not going for that guy. I think you could probably make him a bit better by probably placing him down to like 600 to 700 bucks to place down, and then Warden, I guess, just place him down to the same-ish around price, 6 to 700. and then they'll start to be picked a little bit more often. And then you got the Gladiator, who just downright sucks, and the best thing you can do is just increase his damage. And I actually read a comment about how someone said that they should basically have armor destruction or just melting their armor, and quite honestly, that's not really a bad take. You could probably add that to the Gladiator to make him just a bit more better, but I think the Gladiator was just destined to fail. So that's my overall opinion of the melee towers. Now obviously the two main that you can actually give a pass is the Brawler and Sledger, because they're just really good or just pretty decent, so they don't really classify as a melee tower that needs works. But the three others, goddamn dude, they desperately need some reworks or at least attention. Anyway, I'm done. See you guys in 24 hours.